I thought I'd join the Standing Up BookTube crew, and I'm just realising that lockdown haircut number 2 looks suspiciously like I've shoved my fingers in a plug socket. Never mind. Hi, I'm Liv and welcome back to the Book Nook. So I'm later doing this video than I would have planned because this last week my head's been all over the place and I've had even less of a concept of what day it is than is usual for lately. So today is Juneteenth. Now this is a concept that I knew nothing about until this last month or so, and I suspect I'm not alone in that, particularly here in the UK, and being white here in the UK, not a clue. So I'm not gonna sit here or stand here, I'm so used to sitting down I can't even get that right. I'm not gonna stand here and try and sort of educate in any in-depth about that because it's not my story to tell and I don't know enough of it. But I will link in the description below some links to articles and resources that I found really helpful this last week or so, learning more about what Juneteenth is and what it means, and yeah, a lot more about it in the description below. So if, like me, you're a British white person who's never heard of Juneteenth, you may find some of those resources useful. As well as being Juneteenth, it is also the start of #QueerBlackathon, or is it just QueerBlackathon? I never know with these hashtags, I'm just not cool enough to know whether I'm supposed to put them in or not. So another part of why I'm late to this is that I seem to have like a real problem with midnights. So I'd heard that QueerBlackathon was starting at midnight on Juneteenth, and I just had a total mind fart. I don't understand midnights. I don't know how they work, apparently. Turns out. Now, obviously, it makes sense that if it's starting on midnight of Juneteenth, it's going to be the midnight when it becomes Juneteenth. But in my head, due to my just not understanding how midnights work, I was like, oh yeah, midnight, Juneteenth, that's Friday, Friday, midnight. No, it's not. Brain fart. Total brain fart. I'm an idiot. So that means, like, I'm a whole day late. But better late than never. So basically, QueerBlackathon is a 48-hour readathon being hosted by Jessie over at Bowtie and Books, Francine Simone, channel of the same name, Myona at Myona Reads, and Lauren at The Novel Lush. All of those channels will be linked in the description below, and I really, really recommend that you check out the videos that each of those booktubers have done about what QueerBlackathon is, because they explain it a lot better than me, and they are chock full of recommendations as well. Why does it feel so much weirder standing up and doing this? But as a really brief and simplified, simplistic introduction, as I say, watch those channels for more information. It's a readathon that celebrates the intersection between queerness and blackness. So as I say, all 4 of those channels are full of recommendations for books that you can read as part of QueerBlackathon. So is the hashtag on Twitter. It's positively bursting with recommendations. So really, there's no excuse for not being able to find any books to read that celebrate black voices or queer black voices, like, ever. Is there anymore? No. No, no, no. So I spent my morning sort of watching these channels and researching books, also looking through my own bookshelves to see what I have, both of the titles that have been recommended and just other ones that I might have on my shelves that sort of fit with this theme, choosing some to read over the weekend. Now, because I'm late to it because of aforementioned midnight brain fart, I will be reading this kind of literature over the whole weekend. In terms of my own reading over the weekend, firstly I will be continuing with reading Audre Lorde's Zami, A New Spelling of My Name. So it's is it a biomythography? Yeah, it's written right there, and I forget it. What is with my brain? So I only started this a couple of days ago, sat and read some out in the sun the other day, the last gasp of sunshine before 24 hours of rain, and after about 10 pages in I was just captivated by her writing. It's just magical. I did start reading Your Silence Will Not Protect You, which is published by Silver Press, and I read the preface by Renée Edo-Lodge and the introduction by Sara Ahmed, and as I was reading it I just kind of got this weird feeling. I was like, no, I want to read Zami first. I kind of want to get the author's, I know it's the author's own words in both of them, but I just kind of had a real urge to go with Zami first, so I did, and I'm doing. So Audre Lorde described herself as black woman, lesbian, warrior, poet. I may have got that the wrong way around from her, the actual quote. So she's basically sort of like a literary and cultural icon and should be much higher regarded and known about in sort of literary circles and literary canon kind of thing. So I'm really excited to read more of Zami and ultimately Your Silence Will Not Protect You, but probably not that one this weekend. Next up, I'm going to read The Deep by Rivers Solomon. This is one I've got on my Kindle, so I do not have it to hand. This is one that's sort of vaguely been on my radar this week just from sort of following hashtags on Twitter. I know I'd seen the cover round, but I hadn't sort of investigated it. But then watching Jessie's latest video, where they talk about this book, I was like, oh yes, need this now, thank you, please, and thank you, mine now, please. So River Solomon is a non-binary black writer who's written the novel An Unkindness of Ghosts, which is another one that Jessie talked about on their channel, which I'm also going to get because that just sounds amazing. And another novella, Blood is another word for hunger, I think, and The Deep. So this is a book that's apparently fairly short, but quite weird and complex, and a lot sort of packed into it, and for a short novel or a novella, there's a lot in there. So it's about the water-breathing descendants of African slave women, both those who were thrown overboard and those who took their lives by jumping into the water. And in their society, their traumatic past is remembered by one person, one part of the society, sort of the historian. And it explores sort of the trauma of that ancestry and also how the society functions, and looks at sort of memory and how society lives with memory. And it just sounds, from all the description that Jessie was giving and looking at other stuff since, it just sounds exquisite and very much my jam. I'm also going to read Dean Atta's The Black Flamingo. Big pink bird stands on one leg. Black Flamingo. Flamingo. So this is one that Simon over at Savage Reads was raving about a while ago, so I treated myself to a copy off the back of that. So when I was at uni, I was a huge fan of Dean Atta's poetry and performance. Then after uni, I sort of kind of fell out of touch with all the stuff I was into then. So the fact that they were then branching into writing a novel for young adults, a novel written in verse, was really welcome news to me and very exciting. So it's a novel in verse about a queer young multiracial boy in, I want to say London, but that could be totally wrong, who's sort of coming to terms with his identity, all that encompasses, particularly as a drag artist at university. So Dean is non-binary, and I'm really excited to read this novel from a British writer with this perspective and this voice, because I think a lot of the literature around this that I've seen recommended, more of it seems to come from America than from the UK. I could be wrong, and that could be my ignorance and not looking into it enough, but that's what I've just said. Next up is a book of short stories. Well, short stories, but I've heard that they're either linked or they work really, really well if you just read them sort of more as a novel with vignettes. I don't know how you define it, but it's Lot by Bryan Washington. So Bryan's a queer writer who wrote stories that he said in an interview he hopes they're stories that his queer friends would love. And they're set in Houston and sort of explore Houston as well as why can't I say queerness properly? I need a drink. So they explore queerness and blackness in Houston and in America, and this book seems to have been on a load of lists of sort of books to look out for, or best ofs, or books you should read for 2020. So I'm really, really excited for this. Plus, I haven't read any short stories for a while, whether or not they interlink or work as a novel or not. I just haven't read any short stories, so that'll be nice. Next up is Yrsa Daley-Ward's poetry collection Bone. Now, I read Yrsa's memoir The Terrible, and I'm not sure if I've spoken about it much on here, because it was one of the first books that I was sort of able to read after my dad died nearly 2 years ago, so I wasn't really book trimming then, but I absolutely loved The Terrible, so you should absolutely go and read that one. Now, Bone I've had on my shelf for ages, longer than I had The Terrible for, because I think Bone and another poetry collection that I can't remember because I'm stupid were both featured on Florence of the Machine fame, her sort of online book club thing. Oh, memory. Clearly not working. So that was a few years ago now, and I got it at the time, and for some reason just never got around to it. So I'm really, really excited to dig into this collection of poetry by a black queer woman who's writing in prose I know I love, so I'm sure I'm gonna love this poetry too. Now, knowing how my attention span has been lately, this last couple of weeks or so, I've been struggling to concentrate on sort of like long form anything. I've been spending a lot of time reading sort of articles and resources and things, far too much time on Twitter and Facebook than is healthy for any human being. So my brain's kind of shifted sideways, and it's really struggling with books at the moment, with the exception of Kylie Reid's Such a Fun Age, which I did read this week, which was really nice to actually sit down with a novel for the first time, and I absolutely love that, but I will talk about that properly in a future wrap-up video. So this list of books for me is already quite optimistic for a weekend, considering the way my attention span's been, but if all goes well, great. If not, also fine. I've got these books, and it's not like I can only read them as part of a sort of themed readathon. They're important, and they're valid, and they're worth reading outside of just a readathon. Not just a readathon. I don't mean to say that to dismiss, but I think you know what I mean. Because I think that's part of what we all need to be doing as well. Sort of something I touched on in that last video is not just using black voices or queer voices as a kind of zeitgeisty box-ticking moment thing, and being mindful and aware of consuming those voices and consuming those books in our wider reading, and yeah, just not making it that we only read black voices or queer voices during readathons, that we're actually examining, are we reading a lot of these voices in our day-to-day reading? If not, why not? Now if, by some miracle, I do manage to read all of these books in a weekend, not going to happen, I will also pick up, so that's Akwaeke Emezi's Freshwater. I think it does, yeah, it's this, the hardback cover is not as clear. This is a book that I've had on my shelf for ages. I think I bought this one when I was still working in the bookshop, and everybody has been raving about it, like the nth degree, and it sounds just the right amount of off the wall and weird in terms of style to be totally my kind of thing. I also have a copy of Akwaeke's Pet coming as well, which I've ordered as part of the hashtag Black Publishing Power, which is a hashtag that's been going on Twitter, which is all a sort of call to arms, I guess, to all readers and book buyers to show publishers and book retailers and you know, best-selling lists and things what they should already know, but undeniably don't seem to know, is that there is an appetite for black voices and for black writers, and not just black stories that are centred on pain and trauma, but the whole gamut of everything. So check out that hashtag on Twitter for more info about that. So seeing as I'm a whole day late, because somehow, even at 28, I intrinsically and instinctively don't understand how midnights work, I've got to get cracking on my stack of books for the Queer Blackathon. I've got some brilliant reading and I'm very excited should my attention span be up to the task, which I'm very much hoping it will. So as I say, I will be doing that for the whole weekend, not just today and tomorrow. Are you going to be joining in with Queer Blackathon? If so, what will you be reading? Now remember, of course, like, it's not a competition. Readathons are not competitions. I think, counter to what I was saying earlier about making sure we don't only read these kind of voices during readathons, readathons also are a really good way of putting that spotlight on our own reading habits and what we're reading. So yeah, think of it that way, I guess, if that helps. And yeah, it's not a competition. If you can only read one book over the whole weekend, that's cool. That may well be what I do. May well only manage one book. Who can say? Just don't be hard on yourself. If you see people who are managing to read like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books and you're reading one, your reading one is equally as valid. Yes. If you want to join in but you aren't sure what to read, hopefully this video will have given you a taster. Lots of links down in the description below. As I say, the 4 channels of the 4 lovely humans who are running, ooh, me Devon's on show. The people that are running the Queer Blackathon, their channels will be linked down below, as well as Simon over at Savage Reads, who has some great recommendations as well. A few other channels down there, lots of links and resources and things you can read as well. As always, keep safe, keep well, Black Lives Matter, keep reading, keep learning, keep talking, and balls, I've fucked up another ending, haven't I? Standard.